Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Boski. I'm one of the producers of the Behind the Icon series, and I have a wonderful guest with me, a wonderful cast member, and such a great find because it was a hard character to fill. And it's Mr. Chris Baetens, and he plays the role. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Nina. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Of Mr. Jack Lemmon, who is such a endearing actor, and he is so loved along with Marilyn. And how was it playing? Was this the first time you ever played Jack Lemmon?
Yeah, it was literally the first time I've ever played Jack Lemmon. Although I've said it before, and I'll say it a million times. I'm a great admirer of his work. He's capable of such a wide range. From movies like Some Like It Hot, which is extremely funny, to the China Syndrome, which is just as dramatic as it possibly gets. So I mean, he's one of these wonderful, versatile actors who he does such a great job of capturing the everyman persona, and you can't help but like the guy in whatever role he's playing, So I was very pleased to land the role. Very pleased.
And we were very pleased to find you, by the way, because, with some of these actors, you can play them very, not you personally, but actors can play them very cheesy like and very stereotypical. So his voice, one, is not an easy voice, but two, to play him true to that you're acting too. It's not just his voice, right? So that's, I just, hats off to you. I always say that the Clark Gable, Ron Hayden, who played Clark Gable, and yourself with Jack Lemmon, it's like, those are like my favorite scenes. I love those scenes, and I think when we were talking to Gary last week, he was saying that, you feel like you're a fly on the wall listening and overhearing, especially if you have watched Some Like It Hot, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and listening to that and listening to that podcast later on, as I did, it was really interesting to listen to that, because I didn't feel like I was listening to me.
that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I was actually, I mean, I knew I was there, but it didn't feel like I was, I mean, I felt like I was there, but I didn't feel like I was actually in the middle of that recording session when it happened. So, listening back to it, it was amazing, the kind of work that everybody did putting that piece together. It sounded so beautiful. And when I went back and listened, I got chills up and down my spine. Like, wow, that's really, damn, the Jack Lemmon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was me. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it just, and there was such good direction in the episode. And, the part got brought out of me during the course of that session. And I remember it took a couple of tries to get some of the more nuanced pieces of Jack's voice, because he tends to do this triple stutter thing where well,
Yeah.
and so that kind of thing, is hard to follow. And when you're trying, and I'm trying my best, doing my best not to make it, a caricature of Jack Lemmon, because like I said, I have so much respect for him, and I wanted to make it as respectful of his personality and his legacy as I could. And, and I did feel a little bit of that nervousness because I was working with Erin, who's amazing. And so,
Yeah, she is.
yeah, she is. She's absolutely amazing. So I'm sitting there, and I'm the one who's nervous, because I've never, this was my first real acting job. I mean,
Really? It was your first acting job? Really?
like
Wow.
professional acting job, where I was actually, playing an actual character in a back and forth with someone else. This was truly my first acting gig. And
We hit the mother load or what? I have to tell you, because we were so pressed for time, because we were supposed to have this out by the end of the year, and it kept on getting pushed and pushed and pushed. So now all of a sudden we're in pre-production and production at the same time. So we're casting very quickly as we're going into the studio. So when you're doing something, anything that fast, you don't know really what's going to come out on the other side.
Mhm.
And I sat there going to myself, wow, and this isn't like it was second season. So this is a brand new podcast for all of us, especially for Randall and I that come from radio, right? We
Mhm.
did the podcast for Goodnight Marilyn, but it's a different kind of podcast. So it was really all I can say is we're just so appreciative of you, and hats off to Randall Libero, who, Gary Vitaka Robles, we couldn't do this series without him because it's his book, Icon, Lifetimes and Films of Marilyn Monroe. And he's such an expert. But also it's Randall's magic that, helped you in the studio, helped Aaron in the studio. And just want to have a shout out to him because
Absolutely.
his creative juices and his ability to kind of look at that tone and go, okay, wait a minute here, let's do that again. But I have to say, if I remember correctly, it might have been a few takes, but it wasn't a lot of takes. And so I am just very thankful. What made you, you didn't know us either, so what made you say, gosh, I want to be a part of this?
Well, first of all, it's one of these things where I wanted to. I'm in the early stages of my career in voiceover, so I'm looking for things to challenge myself with. And I saw an opportunity to play Jack Lemmon, which right off the bat, there's point A. I'm like, oh, Jack Lemmon, hey, I love this guy. And then to actually see what the script was about, and I was surprised when you guys contacted me. I was like, okay. When you sent me the email, I was like, oh, great. Um, and it was a challenge for me. It was a challenge for me to take on this role of somebody that I've admired my whole life. And then to be able to play him and to be able to play him against Marilyn Monroe, who is someone else that, has captured my imagination for many, many years. I mean, how can you not, you know, grow up thinking Marilyn Monroe is one of the most intriguing and mysterious and beautiful people ever to exist, and also one of the most complicated, and knowing that she was one of the most complicated as she was, and not want to play opposite that. How can you not want to be a part of something like that? And I definitely wanted to be a part of that. And I'm
Well,
glad that.
I have to say I appreciate that because one of the things that we've really tried to do is tell our story and tell it in an authentic way, which is not always easy. And the story has been told so many times that it's people go, oh my God, not another Marilyn Monroe story. But I have to say, even for me, who knows a lot about her as well, as I say, wow, you know what? This was done even better than I thought it was going to. And and I'm not saying that in a bragging way. I had no idea what was going to come out the other side. I think we were all divinely led, even you playing Jack Lemmon, who you really like to play. One of the questions I want to ask you, Chris, is what do you know about Marilyn now that you didn't know before this podcast?
There's a lot of things that I wasn't aware of with Marilyn. The we all knew, I knew growing up, and I knew from the various things that I'd read about her that she was, that she was very, that she had, that she was kind of that she was a sad person, that there were things going on in the background that nobody was aware of. And of course, in 1950s and 1960s Hollywood, that was by design, because there were a lot of, they didn't want, the studio system didn't want anybody to know what these actors and
Yes, it was run by the studio system for sure.
oh yeah. And so for her, when we're, especially in this piece, there's this sadness that a lot of people are probably still unaware of, because when they see Marilyn Monroe, they see this icon of beauty and sensuality, and this legend. In this piece kind of peels back, and it talks about her childhood, and it talks about, and it's like she's talking to Jack about this episode, my episode in particular, where she's talking about this big production number and how she forgets to take this robe off. And you can kind of get that sense of that sense of just shame and sadness, and it's just you find out through this through through listening to this podcast how truly complicated this poor woman was, and how truly haunted she was, and which when you think about how she left us, it helps in some ways. It makes it make more sense.
Yeah, I
um
always say to people, to understand somebody's story, they don't wake up one day and just become that person.
no.
And I think that, for a lot of us, if we can hear the story of their childhood, not just they had a rough childhood or whatever, but get a chance to experience it. And I think, that's one of the things I know when I listened to episode 1, I wasn't quite sure what was going to come out. I was like, wow, I felt like I was in the room with her. It was such a humanizing experience. That's the best way I could describe it. So what do you want people to get out of this series? Given the fact that you've played Jack Lemmon, you've got a chance to listen to the episodes, what would you like people to get out of it?
I want people to get out of it that Marilyn was more than just the pictures you see on the walls, than the pictures that you see on the covers of magazines or in the scenes of the movies that you see her in. That she was, that she was deep down somebody who was looking for a lot of things in life. And it, it didn't seem like, even though you know, she was getting fame and fortune and recognition, she still wasn't getting what she needed out of any of it. And that can, that not that having those things doesn't necessarily make you whole, and that, you know, and trying to seek happiness in just in those things isn't going to make you any happier. There are other things in life that are worth more. And in her case, she was seeking those out too. But, somehow she just, she didn't quite get there as much
So
as she.
she didn't quite get there, but I'm hoping that even with this podcast, one of our biggest missions is to take a tragedy and turn it into a transformation. Gary's a mental health professional, I'm a coach, and you're always trying to get people to be better. And I think if somebody's legacy is going to be exposed on such a world stage, let's allow it to do something good, which is to reduce the stigma of mental illness and addiction, and
Exactly.
also get people the right help. Because just imagine you're seeing her or hearing this podcast in her childhood, right? And people can transform and change, but back in 1962 she didn't have the right resources or tools. Not that it was anybody's exact fault. Back in
No,
1962,
no,
that's what they
no,
did, right? Today's standards would be very different, but you've got to put them in that standard of that time, right? But
absolutely.
it was going to make her symptoms and her lack of sleep and everything else that was going on, it really it made it a lot worse, right? So
Mm.
I think that, if we could make a little dent on that, that would be one of our probably our biggest missions here, is to, Aaron, and probably you, is to entertain. We want to entertain, we want to educate, and we want to bring a transformation into the world of mental illness and addiction. And, you heard it from Gary Vitaka Robles himself, but he said, I'm looking forward to writing more episodes where Chris Baetens gets to play Jack Lemmon, right?
I
So
will be more than happy to be there. And it's absolutely right. One of the things that we wanted that one of the things that's very important is destigmatizing mental health. I mean, I'm actually currently embroiled right now in an audiobook that I'm recording for someone that's it's all about mental illness, and how this part of it is the stigmatization of mental health issues in the past, and talking about the 1950s and the 1960s. And if we can somehow manage to get people to understand that the help is out there now. And maybe if Marilyn had what the kinds of resources that we have today, she might still be with us, or she might have at least been here well into her old age. So
Exactly. And, it's always about getting not just help, but the right help. So for anybody that is watching this, definitely go to behindtheicon.com. But if you are suffering from any kind of mental illness or addiction, it's time to make an adjustment and get help and transform your life. Because the one thing I would say, one of the main themes of this podcast is resilience. And that's one of the things that Marilyn has a lot of, or did have a lot of, was
yeah,
resilience. And want to thank you for this wonderful ride and journey that you've been on with us. And it's just the beginning, Chris. So excited to have you.
thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.